My existence ended on the day of my selection. The Emperor's warriors arrived at our hive like a tempest of golden ceramite and gleaming armor, their presence illuminated by the unforgiving industrial luminescence. There were no speeches about heroism or distinction. Their words concerned only obligation. We received no inquiry about our willingness to serve. Within the Imperium, such service isn't optional. It represents the sole meaningful existence. Thus, I found myself taken, alongside 30 other youths from Hive Secundus's savage gang conflicts. My final vision of the only world I'd experienced remains vivid, those corroded metal towers stretching futilely toward an unseen sky, the caustic fumes that had filled our respiratory systems since infancy, the perpetual mechanical humming that served as our nightly lullaby. These possessed no aesthetic value, yet they belonged to me. Everything familiar would vanish forever. As we sat in the transport vessel's silence, its engines thrumming around us, nobody ventured to speak. The Space Marine standing watch over us commanded such awe that even the most audacious Hive gang members maintained absolute quiet. His warplate bore the deep crimson of freshly spilled blood, decorated with emblems of warfare and religious devotion. His helmet presented a skull's countenance, revealing neither sentiment nor vulnerability. Our knowledge of these death angels came solely from hushed tales and propaganda imagery, yet nothing could have prepared us for their overwhelming physical supremacy. Every gesture possessed deliberation and control, as though reality itself bent to their desires. "You haven't been selected for greatness," the Space Marine eventually spoke, his voice modified and enhanced through his helmet's communication system. "You represent raw resources, nothing beyond that. Death will claim many. Failure awaits most. This isn't a journey toward honor, it's a commitment to bondage until mortality takes you." These recruitment words contradicted my expectations. No promises of authority or status emerged, only obligation and probable demise. I surveyed the other youths. Some barely reached adolescence, malnourished beings with sunken faces and prematurely aged gazes. Others resembled me, toughened by years of gang combat, their bodies bearing scars and their psyches hardened. Fear united us exclusively, though none would confess it. The voyage consumed 7 days, though temporal measurement held minimal significance within the transport's metallic interior. Daily rations consisted of a nutrient paste devoid of flavor, yet it satisfied our hunger more thoroughly than any under-hive sustenance. Servitors supervised our twice-daily relief periods. We rested on bare metal decking without coverings, clustering together against the vessel's chill. The Space Marine appeared to require neither rest nor nourishment. He maintained his vigil, an incarnation of warfare itself. On that 7th day, tremors coursed through the vessel. Our destination had been reached. The boarding ramp lowered, and illumination flooded our compartment, intense and overwhelming. Following days of shadow, we were driven forward like livestock, squinting and confused. The world awaiting us bore no resemblance to our origin. Mountain ranges ascended toward the sky, their summits concealed by atmospheric vapor. Woodland expanses containing actual trees, entities we'd encountered only in pictorial records, spread across lowlands. The atmosphere possessed purity that caused pain, searing our respiratory systems adapted to the hive's contaminated atmosphere. Above everything loomed a fortress monastery integrated into the largest mountain's surface, a testament to humanity's domination over the natural world. "Welcome to your burial ground," the Space Marine declared, finally removing his helmet. The visage beneath barely qualified as human, skin pallid as death's embrace, marked by countless scars. His eyes seemed capable of perceiving through flesh and bone to reach one's essence, a mouth permanently configured in disapproving severity. Yet within those inhuman eyes flickered something indefinable, perhaps remembrance. Perhaps he too had once stood as a terrified youth before this fortress, questioning whether home would ever be seen again. "I am Brother Sergeant Krause," he announced. "From this point forward, your previous existences are eliminated. Your names become null. Your families fade to obscurity. You exist exclusively to serve the chapter, and through it, the God Emperor of mankind. Another Space Marine emerged from the fortress. This one wore white vestments rather than battle plate. His scalp bore no hair. His face displayed surgical scarring and augmented components. One optical organ had been substituted with a luminous red lens that hummed quietly as it examined us. "I am Apothecary Vaughn," the robed Space Marine proclaimed. "Preliminary examination begins now. Those who succeed will commence the transformation sequence. Those who don't will serve the Emperor through alternative means." The implication possessed clarity: success or mortality, achievement or disposal. The Imperium discards nothing, particularly human existence. Those judged inadequate for transformation would probably become servitors at best, their consciousness erased and their bodies enhanced with primitive machinery to function as animate instruments. We proceeded through enormous adamantium portals into the fortress monastery's depths. The passages possessed sufficient width for 3 Space Marines to advance side by side in complete tactical dreadnought armor. The overhead spaces soared above us, every surface displaying devotional symbolism, cranial remains, and chapter insignia. Servitors shuffled past, their remaining human eyes barely acknowledging us. Chapter serfs, human attendants bound to the Space Marines, hastened through their responsibilities, gazes lowered in submission. The examination facility possessed clinical coldness. White tiles covered all surfaces, marked with aged blood that resisted complete removal. Surgical implements lined the walls, some familiar, others alien and horrifying in their suggested applications. Examination platforms equipped with restraints stood in organized arrays, waiting. "Disrobe," Apothecary Vaughn ordered. "Completely." A moment's hesitation preceded our compliance. In the underhive, nakedness represented vulnerability, yet none dared resist. We removed our filthy garments, the final artifacts of our former existence, and stood trembling in the frigid air. The examinations proved comprehensive and degrading. Every cavity probed, every appendage measured, every response assessed. Blood extraction, skin sampling, reflex testing. Throughout, Apothecary Vaughn and his assistants discussed us as though we were animals, documenting deficiencies and capabilities with identical clinical detachment. Subject 17 demonstrates favorable bone mass. Subject 23 presents respiratory damage consistent with hive contamination. Document for priority lung enhancement. Subject 8 displays malnutrition affecting skeletal formation. Rejection. Thus, it proceeded. Numerical designations, not identities. Resources, not humans. 3 youths were removed during examinations, declared unsuitable. Their expressions combined relief with humiliation. They had failed, yet survival seemed assured, or so they believed. I never encountered them again. Following examination completion, we received identical gray vestments and were conducted to a dormitory arrangement. Arrays of narrow sleeping platforms, each with minimal bedding and nothing additional. No wall decorations, no personal possessions allowed. A servitor occupied the entrance, its human elements visible beneath inadequately grafted machinery. "Sleep," it intoned in a mechanical approximation of human speech. "Tomorrow commences your dying." I reclined on my designated platform, the unfamiliar softness of even this minimal cushioning disconcerting after existing on metal and stone. Around me, the other youths shifted restlessly, some crying silently, others staring emptily at the ceiling. None communicated. What words could suffice? We had been selected, but for what purpose? To become inhuman combatants serving a divine emperor none of us had witnessed. To perish in the endeavor? I contemplated my gang in the underhive. The blood scorpions, our self-designation, a pathetic attempt at intimidation. We had fought and killed for territory no rational being would desire, for resources barely sufficient for survival. Yet brotherhood existed there, forged through shared adversity. Here we represented competitors. Only the most resilient would survive to become Space Marines. The remainder would be eliminated or worse. As unconsciousness finally approached, strange tranquility descended upon my consciousness. I had survived 18 years in Warhammer, the Underhive, where most expired before their 10th birthday. I had terminated my first victim at 12, a rival gang member who had committed the error of presenting his back. I had advanced to lieutenant in the Blood Scorpions through intelligence and measured violence. If anyone could endure this transformation, it would be me. My assessment proved incorrect, naturally. Tiber would not endure. He could not. For a Space Marine isn't an enhanced human. He represents something entirely different, something simultaneously exceeding and falling short of humanity's potential. Morning arrived prematurely, heralded by a deafening alarm that startled us from unconsciousness. We received 5 minutes for relief in communal facilities offering no privacy, then were herded to an immense dining facility. Space Marines occupied elevated tables, consuming enormous food quantities with mechanical precision. We aspirants were directed to lower tables where bowls of nutrient porridge awaited us. "Consume rapidly," a chapter serf instructed. "You possess 10 minutes." The porridge lacked flavor yet provided sustenance, engineered for nutritional efficiency rather than palatability. During our meal, I studied our environment more thoroughly. The dining hall's surfaces displayed battle trophies, alien anatomical components preserved in stasis containment, shattered enemy armaments mounted as devotional artifacts. Above everything suspended an enormous aquila, the twin-headed eagle representing the Imperium, its golden appendages spanning the entire overhead space. Before we completed eating, Brother Sergeant Krause entered the facility. His presence immediately silenced all aspirant conversation. "Today," he announced, "we commence your reconstruction. Your bodies possess weakness. Your minds remain untested. Some won't survive the physical conditioning required before implantation can begin. This is intentional. Only the deserving will receive the Emperor's gifts." We were conducted to an extensive training area, an open courtyard enclosed by the fortress boundaries. The morning atmosphere possessed biting cold, our exhalations visible as white vapor. Mountains dominated every direction, their summits crowned with frozen precipitation despite the summer period. "Run," Krause commanded simply, indicating a path ascending the mountainside. "Those failing to complete the circuit by midday receive no food today. Those lagging tomorrow will not eat again. Those failing on the third day will be removed from the program." The path extended before us, vanishing into the tree line halfway up the nearest mountain. None of us comprehended the circuit's full extent, yet it clearly encompassed many kilometers. Having existed within hive confines, none had ever traversed such distances. Most had never run beyond brief sprints through underhive passages. Thus, we ran. The initial tempo proved manageable, yet the constant ascent and diminishing oxygen rapidly extracted their toll. By the first kilometer, the group had already dispersed. The strongest advanced ahead while the weakest began falling behind. I positioned myself somewhere centrally, my gang-hardened physique serving adequately, yet my respiratory system burning with each breath of the pure mountain atmosphere. The path grew steeper, winding through dense woodland where root systems threatened stumbling at every stride. Then it emerged onto rocky protrusions where a single error meant plummeting hundreds of meters. Throughout, servitor skulls hovered around us, monitoring our advancement and transmitting to unseen authorities. I lost temporal awareness as we ran. The solar body climbed higher in the firmament, beating down mercilessly. My gray vestment became saturated with perspiration, my feet bloodied within poorly fitted footwear. Yet I continued running, concentrating on each stride, each respiration. This didn't differ significantly from the Underhive, I rationalized. Life there represented constant endurance and willpower testing. This merely constituted another manifestation of identical struggle. When I finally stumbled back into the training area, The sun occupied its zenith. I had achieved the deadline, though barely. Of the 27 aspirants who had commenced the run, only 18 had returned punctually. The others trickled in over subsequent hours, their faces hollow with exhaustion and the awareness they would receive no nourishment that day. That evening, as we collapsed onto our platforms, musculature protesting in agony, one youth failed to return at all. Nobody spoke of him, nobody posed questions. He had failed, and that represented all that mattered in this new reality. The subsequent day brought identical running, yet this time with weighted containers secured to our backs. The day following, we ran in primitive carapace armor. Each day, the challenge intensified. Each day, more youths failed to return. By the first week's conclusion, our number had diminished to 15. Those remaining grew stronger, our bodies adapting to the brutal regimen with surprising rapidity. The nutrient-concentrated food, the pure atmosphere, the constant physical stress, all functioned to transform us. Musculature developed, respiratory capacity expanded, reflexes enhanced. Yet this merely represented preparation. We were informed our bodies were being conditioned to survive the actual transformation awaiting us. In the second week, combat instruction commenced, not with the chain swords or bolt pistols of the Space Marines, but with wooden staffs and our unaugmented hands. Brother Sergeant Krauss and other training officials taught us the fundamentals of Imperial close combat methodology, a brutal yet efficient approach that emphasized overwhelming power and conclusive strikes. We fought each other in endless exercises and sparring encounters. Friendship was prohibited. Compassion was eliminated along with weakness. I derived perverse satisfaction from my execution, my underhive experience providing an advantage in the required savagery. Yet even I experienced daily humbling by the training officials, their transhuman physiques moving with impossible velocity and accuracy as they demonstrated techniques or administered corrections. Each evening brought new discomfort, new contusions, new scarring. Our bodies were being reconstructed through suffering and exertion. Yet our minds concerned the chapter most. Hypno-indoctrination commenced in the third week. We would be conducted to a darkened chamber where we were secured into metal thrones. Neural interfaces were attached to our skulls through painful connectors that punctured the skin. Then the visions would commence, flooding directly into our consciousness, bypassing our sensory organs entirely. The Imperium's history, the God Emperor's glory, the treachery of the alien, the mutant, the heretic, combat methodologies and armament specifications, litanies of hatred and devotion. The information poured into us in a deluge that threatened to overwhelm our very identity. Hours would elapse like moments, and we would emerge depleted and disoriented, our minds reshaped incrementally with each session. Knowledge without comprehension proves useless, Brother Chaplain Mordeth informed us during one of his sermons. Comprehension without faith proves dangerous. You will know, you will comprehend, you will believe, or you will perish. The chaplain presented a terrifying figure, his armor black as the void, his skull helm a visage of mortality itself, his Crozius Arcanum, a staff topped with the imperial Aquila, crackled with energy capable of shattering bones and rupturing organs with contact. He spoke not of the Emperor's affection, but of his judgment, not of glory, but of obligation, not of triumph, but of sacrifice. You believe you suffer, he once stated, pacing before us as we knelt in the chapter's chapel. You comprehend nothing of suffering. The Emperor sits upon the golden throne, his body, a deteriorated husk sustained exclusively by the sacrifice of 1,000 souls daily. For 10,000 years he has endured this torment, never resting, never ceasing his vigil. What are your insignificant pains compared to his eternal agony? Nothing. Less than nothing. By the first month's conclusion, only 10 aspirants remained. We had been molded into something no longer completely human, yet distant from transhuman. Our bodies were hardened, our minds saturated with imperial doctrine. our spirits shattered and reforged in the crucible of constant struggle. We were prepared for the subsequent phase. The actual transformation was about to commence. The surgery occurred in the Apothecarion, an extensive medical complex deep within the fortress monastery. Apothecary Vaughn and his assistants worked with precision born of centuries of practice. We were not all operated upon simultaneously, but in a carefully planned sequence. I was third. I observed as the first 2 aspirants were taken into the surgical theater. Hours elapsed before the first was transported out, unconscious and already altered. His chest had been opened and resealed. The skin puckered around fresh scarring. Monitoring devices attached to him emitted steady signals, tracking the progress of the foreign organ now implanted within him. The second aspirant did not emerge alive. A chapter serf exited the theater, transporting a body container, the contents clearly no longer of any utility to the chapter. No explanation was provided. No mourning permitted. He had failed, as many had before him. When my turn arrived, I was stripped and cleansed with antiseptic solutions that burned my skin. I remained conscious as they secured me to the operating platform, conscious as they inserted needles into my veins, pumping me with chemicals that paralyzed my body while maintaining my mind awake and aware. Conscious as Apothecary Vaughn approached with a scalpel in hand, his augmented eye humming as it focused on my chest. "The secondary heart," he stated clinically. "The first of many gifts you will receive if your body accepts it." The suffering exceeded description. Despite the chemicals, I experienced every incision, every manipulation of my internal organs to accommodate something that should not exist there. The secondary heart, harvested from the chapter's gene seed stocks, was a mass of artificially cultivated tissue that would eventually become a fully operational second heart, providing redundancy and increased blood circulation to nourish my soon-to-be enhanced musculature. Throughout the surgery, Brother Chaplain Mordith stood nearby, reciting litanies of strength and endurance. Whether for my benefit or as ritual obligations, I could not discern through the haze of agony. I desired to scream, but could not. I desired to lose consciousness, but was denied even that mercy. When it concluded, I was transported to a recovery chamber where the other surviving aspirant lay. His eyes met mine, and I perceived in them the same trauma, the same fundamental violation. We had been informed our bodies would be reconstructed, yet understanding arrived only now through shared suffering. We were being deconstructed first, torn apart so that something new could be constructed from the fragments. Recovery consumed weeks, during which the secondary heart slowly integrated with my circulatory system. The suffering never fully subsided, merely transformed in character and location as my body fought against and gradually accepted the foreign organ. Regular blood specimens were extracted, analyzed, adjustments made to chemical regimens. I existed in a twilight state between agony and unconsciousness. Once the secondary heart was deemed successfully implanted, the next phase commenced. The osmodula, a small organ implanted at the skull's base, began altering my skeletal structure. Bones thickened and strengthened, reinforced by ceramic-like deposits. The process proved excruciating, like growth pains magnified 1,000-fold. I could perceive my very skeleton transforming within me, stretching my skin, pulling at my muscles and tendons. One by one, the other organs followed. The biscopia implanted in the chest cavity drastically accelerated muscle growth. The hemastamen placed within the main heart altered my blood chemistry to enhance oxygen-carrying capacity and promote rapid healing. The Laramens organ, nestled beside the primary heart, released specialized cells that quickly coagulated blood at wound sites, effectively sealing injuries almost instantly. Each implantation was followed by weeks of adjustment, training modified to test and strengthen the new capabilities. We grew taller, broader, stronger. Our senses sharpened. Our reflexes quickened. With each change, we moved further from humanity and closer to the transhuman ideal of the Adeptus Astartes. Not all implants integrated successfully in every aspirant. 2 more of our dwindling number perished when their bodies rejected the catalepsian node, an implant at the brain's rear that allowed a space marine to function without sleep by resting half the brain alternately. Another was crippled when the implantation of the preomnor, a pre-stomach that could neutralize toxins, went awry. He was taken away, presumably to serve the chapter in some lesser capacity, perhaps as a chapter serf if he was fortunate, more likely as a servitor if he was not. Throughout this process, our training continued whenever our bodies were capable. Physical conditioning grew ever more demanding as our enhanced physiology developed. Combat exercises became more complex, incorporating the use of actual Astartes weapons and equipment scaled for our still-growing frames. Hypno-indoctrination intensified, delving deeper into chapter-specific battle doctrines and the minutiae of equipment maintenance. We were being programmed as much as trained, our minds shaped to think as space marines rather than as men. Individual thought was not eliminated but channeled, directed toward tactical analysis and combat efficiency rather than personal desires or ambitions. By the 6th month, only 5 aspirants remained of the original 30. We had each received most of the basic organ implants, though the most powerful would come later after we had proven our worth as Scout Marines. We were already transhuman by any reasonable definition, towering over normal men. Our bodies capable of feats that would have seemed miraculous in our previous lives. Yet we were still neophytes, still unproven. The final test awaited us. The trial by fire that would determine if we were worthy to don the scout armor and take our first steps as true battle brothers of the chapter. The trial took place on a death world 50 light-years from the chapter homeworld. We were transported there in a small strike cruiser, each of us sealed in individual drop pods. Brother Sergeant Krause briefed us, in the ship's armory, as we were fitted with scout armor for the first time. The black carapace beneath our skin, interfacing with the armor's systems. "You will be deployed separately," he explained, checking the seal on my armor's neck joint with practiced precision. "Each of you has a designated extraction point located 50 kilometers from your drop zone. You have 3 days to reach it. The planet's indigenous life forms are universally hostile. Previous geological surveys indicate valuable mineral deposits that may be of interest to the chapter. You will be equipped with a combat knife, bolt pistol, 3 clips of ammunition, and a data slate containing minimal navigational information." He paused, his transhuman eyes boring into mine. "This is not merely a survival exercise. It is a resource assessment mission. The chapter expects data on the planet's potential usefulness. Failure to provide this information will be considered mission failure regardless of whether you reach the extraction point." Another space marine bearing the insignia of the Tech Marine Order approached with our weapons. "The Emperor's eyes are upon you," he intoned as he handed me a bolt pistol, the weight of it substantial even to my enhanced strength. "Remember that a space marine serves even in death." We were each led to our assigned drop pod, a claustrophobic metal egg designed to survive atmospheric entry and deliver its contents, whether space marines or equipment, to a planet's surface with brutal efficiency. The interior was Spartan, consisting of little more than a restraint harness and basic life support systems. As the pod's door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, cutting me off from my battle brothers, I felt a moment of pure isolation unlike any I had experienced before. In the underhive, one was always aware of the teeming masses above and around. In the fortress monastery, the presence of the chapter was a constant. Here, sealed in this metal coffin about to be fired at a hostile world, I was truly alone. The drop itself was violence incarnate. Despite the pod's inertial dampeners and my own enhanced physiology, the G-forces of launch and atmospheric entry slammed me against the restraint harness with enough force to bruise even my reinforced skeleton. The pod's interior heated to near intolerable levels as friction with the atmosphere created a superheated plasma sheath around the exterior. Then came the impact, a bone-jarring crash as the pod's retro thrusters failed to fully counteract the terminal velocity. Emergency systems deployed, absorption gels flooding the compartment to prevent fatal injury. For several moments, I hung suspended in the viscous fluid, my enhanced lungs able to extract oxygen directly from the oxygenated gel. Then the pod's front section blew outward, explosive bolts detonating in a carefully designed sequence. The gel drained away, and I stepped out onto alien soil for the first time in my life. The world that greeted me was primordial and savage. Massive trees towered overhead, their canopies blocking most of the light from the system's blue-white star. The air was thick with moisture and the scent of decay, rich and organic in a way the processed atmosphere of the hive, or even the mountain air of the fortress monastery, had never been. Sounds surrounded me, a cacophony of alien life going about its ancient cycles of consumption and reproduction. I checked my equipment methodically as I had been trained. Bolt pistol secured in its holster, combat knife sheathed at my thigh, data slate functioning and displaying the coordinates of the extraction point. According to the slate, I had been dropped approximately 48 kilometers from my destination, meaning I would need to maintain a pace of at least 16 kilometers per day to reach it in time. For an unaugmented human, this would have been challenging even on hospitable terrain. For a Space Marine neophyte on a death world, it was a brutal test of every enhancement and skill we had developed. But the chapter demanded nothing less than excellence. Anything short of that was failure, and failure meant death. I began to move, settling into the ground-eating lope that our modified musculature and enhanced cardiovascular systems made possible. Even encumbered by armor and equipment, I could maintain this pace for hours without rest. One of the many gifts of the Astartes transformation. The first attack came 3 hours into my journey. A predator, something like a reptilian wolf with too many limbs and eyes, erupted from the underbrush. It was fast, but my enhanced reflexes were faster. The combat knife found its throat before it could close its multiple jaws on my armored leg. Black ichor sprayed from the wound, sizzling where it touched my armor's ceramic plates. I took samples of its blood and tissue as required by the mission parameters. The data slate's rudimentary cogitator analyzed the specimens, noting potentially useful biochemical compounds. This information would be relayed to the chapter upon extraction, adding to their knowledge of this world's resources. The day continued in this pattern: movement, observation, occasional combat with the world's fauna. By nightfall, I had covered nearly 20 kilometers and filled the data slate's memory with biological and geological data. I found a defensible position among the exposed roots of a massive tree and settled in for a brief rest, allowing half my brain to sleep while the other half remained vigilant, courtesy of the catalepsian node. Dawn brought new challenges. The forest gave way to a vast swamp, fetid and bubbling with noxious gases. My armor's autosenses detected toxins in the air, but my enhanced physiology and the multi-lung implant filtered them without difficulty. The terrain slowed my progress considerably, the sucking mud threatening to claim my boots with each step. It was in this swamp that I encountered the first true test of my transformation. A creature vast and amorphous rose from the murky waters, a gelatinous mass of tentacles and caustic secretions. My bolt pistol barked, mass reactive shells detonating within the thing's translucent flesh. But it seemed to absorb the damage, sealing the wounds almost as quickly as they were inflicted. For the first time since my transformation began, I felt fear. Not the constant background anxiety of failure that had accompanied the process, but true primal fear. This was a foe beyond my capabilities, a threat I was not equipped to overcome. In my previous life, fear would have triggered flight, the instinct for self-preservation overriding all else. But my hypno-indoctrination had reconditioned these responses. Fear was processed differently now, channeled into heightened awareness and tactical calculation rather than panic. I assessed my options with unnatural clarity. Direct confrontation was futile given my limited ammunition and the creature's regenerative capabilities. Retreat would cost precious time and might lead to failure of the mission. Observation suggested the creature was territorial, but slow-moving outside its aquatic environment. The solution presented itself with cold logic. I selected a path that skirted the creature's reach, using the bolt pistol not to wound it but to distract it, drawing its attention to one area while I circled to another. The maneuver cost me an hour, but preserved my ammunition and prevented injury that might have compromised the mission. By the second night, I had covered another 18 kilometers despite the difficult terrain. The swamp had given way to rocky highlands, the air thinner but cleaner. My enhanced night vision allowed me to continue moving even after darkness fell, picking my way through treacherous scree slopes and narrow ravines. I encountered 3 more aspirants during this phase of the journey. Though we exchanged no words, each was focused on his own path, his own mission. We acknowledged each other with nothing more than brief nods before continuing on our separate ways. We were battle brothers now, bound by shared transformation and purpose. But this trial was individual. Each must prove his worth alone. The third day brought me within sight of the extraction point, a plateau cleared of vegetation, marked by a signal beacon visible only to the enhanced visual spectrum of Astartes' autosenses. I had covered the required distance ahead of schedule and compiled an extensive survey of the planet's resources. By any measure, I had succeeded. Yet, as I approached the plateau, I realized the final test was yet to come. The area surrounding the extraction point teemed with life signs, predators drawn perhaps by the subtle electromagnetic emissions of the beacon. To reach the extraction point would require fighting through a gauntlet of the planet's most dangerous fauna, a final trial of combat prowess. I checked my remaining ammunition. 2 clips for the bolt. Pistol, enough for 12 shots. My combat knife was notched from previous encounters but still serviceable. My armor had sustained minor damage but remained functional. I was tired, having allowed myself only the minimum rest required to maintain combat effectiveness. The engagement lasted 27 minutes by my armor's chronometer. I expended all remaining ammunition and was forced to rely on the combat knife for the final 3 kills. My armor's left pauldron was torn away by claws that could shred ceramite, and a caustic spray from one creature had damaged the seal on my right gauntlet, exposing the skin beneath to the toxic atmosphere. When I finally reached the beacon, blood, both human and Xenos, coating my armor, Brother Sergeant Kraus was waiting. He stood impassive, his bolter held casually at his side, giving no indication whether he had observed my approach or the combat that preceded it. "You are late," he stated flatly. I checked my chronometer. I had indeed missed the designated extraction time by 13 minutes, delayed by the unexpected resistance around the plateau. "The mission data," I responded, offering the data slate rather than excuses. Kraus took it, interfacing it with his armor's systems to rapidly assess the information I had gathered. For long moments, he stood motionless, only the occasional flicker of his autosenses indicating any activity. "Acceptable," he finally declared, returning the slate, "though your tactical assessment of the northern mineral deposits lacks depth." He turned and began walking toward the gunship that waited at the center of the plateau, its engines idling. I followed, matching his pace despite my fatigue and injuries. "How many survived?" I asked, the question escaping before I could suppress it. A remnant of human curiosity not yet fully purged by my indoctrination. Kraus did not break stride or turn. 3, including you. The others failed to reach their extraction points within the allotted time or failed to gather adequate mission data. 3 out of 5 who had begun the trial. 3 out of 30 who had been taken from the hive. A 90% attrition rate, and we were not yet full battle brothers. The cost of creating an Astartes was measured not just in resources, but in human lives, in potential extinguished so that the few worthy might ascend. The return to the chapter homeworld passed in a blur of medical treatment and debriefing. My injuries were tended to with the same clinical efficiency that had characterized every aspect of the transformation process. The damaged armor was removed, cataloged for repair or recycling of components. The mission data was extracted and analyzed by the chapter's tech marines and apothecaries. Then, came the ceremony. The three of us who had survived the trial stood before the assembled chapter, or at least those battle brothers not currently deployed on missions across the sector. We knelt on the cold stone floor of the chapter's great hall, heads bowed, still wearing the bodysuits that interfaced with our armor. The chapter master himself addressed us, a figure of such presence that even other space marines seemed diminished in comparison. His armor was a masterwork of artisanry, every plate inscribed with battles and honors accumulated over centuries of service. His face, when he removed his helm, was a testament to warfare, scarred and rebuilt so many times that little original tissue remained, yet bearing an undeniable nobility. "You kneel before us as aspirant," he intoned, his voice filling the vast chamber without apparent effort. "You will rise as scout marines of the chapter. Your transformation is not complete, nor will it be for many years yet, but you have proven worthy of the next stage in your service to the Emperor." He approached each of us in turn, pressing the pommel of a ceremonial power sword to our bowed heads, a gesture reminiscent of ancient knighthood rituals from old Terra. "No longer are you known by the names of your mortal birth," he continued. "You are reborn in service to the chapter and the Imperium. You will be known henceforth by your designation and the honor you bring to it through dutiful service." When he reached me, the sword's pommel cold against my scalp, he spoke the words that completed my transformation from gang lieutenant to transhuman warrior. "Rise, Brother Joral." Not Tiber Joral of Hive Secundus, lieutenant of the Blood Scorpions gang. Just Joral now. A designation rather than a name. A component in the chapter's war machine rather than an individual with agency or ambition beyond service. We were assigned to the 10th Company, the scout company that served as the final training ground for neophytes before they would earn their place as full battle brothers. Scout Sergeant Tauron became our new taskmaster, a veteran of 3 centuries who had chosen to forgo promotion to train the next generation of Astartes. His face was a roadmap of old scars, his left eye replaced with a simple augmetic that glowed a dull red in darkness. "Forget everything you think you know about combat," he told us on our first day of scout training. "You are no longer gangers or militia or whatever you were before. You are weapons of the Imperium, and you will learn to kill with the precision and certainty that befits your station." Scout training was different from the brutal conditioning that had preceded it. Where before we had been broken down, now we were being rebuilt, forged into something with purpose. We learned the arts of stealth and reconnaissance, how to move unseen even in our enhanced bodies. We mastered the scout pattern bolter, a lighter variant of the holy weapon of the Astartes. We studied the doctrines of warfare that had been developed over 10 millennia of constant combat across the galaxy. Most importantly, we learned to function as a unit, rather than as individuals. The 3 of us who had survived the transformation and trials were joined by 4 other scouts from previous recruitment cycles, forming a full squad under Sergeant Tauron's command. We trained together, fought together, studied together. Individualism was not purged entirely, for tactical flexibility required independent thought, but it was subordinated to the needs of the squad and chapter. My first actual combat deployment came 3 months into scout training. A system on the edge of the sector had reported Xenos activity, specifically orc raiders attacking isolated mining colonies. Our squad was attached to a strike force commanded by Brother Captain Veros, deployed from orbit via drop pod to counterattack an orc warband that had seized a promethium refinery. Nothing in my training, nothing in my former life in the Underhive, had prepared me for the reality of warfare against such an enemy. Orcs were monsters from nightmare, green-skinned brutes that stood as tall as a space marine but broader, their crude weapons powered by some incomprehensible combination of primitive technology and innate psychic ability. They felt no fear, knew no caution, experienced joy only in violence and bloodshed. Our drop pod slammed into the refinery's main courtyard, its doors blasting outward to clear our exit. The full battle brothers were first out, tactical marines in their blue armor, advancing with disciplined fire from their bolters, cutting down the first wave of orcs with practiced efficiency. Sergeant Taran led us scouts out behind them, directing us to take up supporting positions on the refinery's storage tanks, where our longer-ranged scout bolters could provide covering fire. The stench was the first thing that struck me, a miasma of crude fungal growth, unwashed bodies, and industrial chemicals that penetrated even my enhanced filtering systems. Then came the noise, the bestial roars of the orcs as they charged toward our position, their crude shooters blazing away with little accuracy but devastating effect when they found a target. I positioned myself as instructed, activating the enhanced visual modes of my scout armor's targeting systems. Through the scope of my bolter, I could see individual orcs in detail, their misshapen faces twisted in expressions of feral delight as they engaged in combat. I selected targets according to the doctrines I had been taught, prioritizing those carrying the heaviest weapons or displaying the crude symbols of orc leadership. My first kill in true combat was an orc knob, a brute nearly twice the size of its fellows, wearing cobbled-together armor plates and wielding a massive cleaver that could shear through ceramite with its powered edge. I tracked it through my scope as it charged toward the tactical squad's flank, marking its path and calculating the lead necessary to compensate for its movement. 3 rounds fired in rapid succession caught it in the head and throat. The first 2 penetrated its thick skull, detonating inside the brain case. The third was unnecessary, but Sergeant Taran had taught us to ensure our kills. Waste in ammunition was preferable to leaving an enemy with any chance of continued resistance. The battle lasted 3 hours and 27 minutes. The orcs fought to the last, never retreating, never surrendering. We purged them from the refinery room by room, corridor by corridor, with bolter fire and combat blades. When it was over, 347 orc corpses were counted. 2 full battle brothers had fallen, their gene seed harvested by the accompanying apothecary for return to the chapter. One of my fellow scouts, Brother Creus, lost an arm to an orc choppa, necessitating a bionic replacement that would be installed upon our return to the fortress monastery. I had performed adequately, according to Sergeant Taran's assessment, not exceptionally, but without major error. I had expended ammunition at an acceptable rate, maintained discipline under fire, and followed orders without hesitation. In the Underhive, such a battle would have been the stuff of legend, spoken of for generations. Here, it was merely another minor engagement, a small victory in an endless war that had raged since before my ancestors were born and would continue long after my eventual death in service. The next 2 years passed in a cycle of training and deployment. We were sent to combat zones across the sector, always in support roles, learning through observation and controlled participation. With each deployment, we became more proficient, more detached, more Astartes, and less human. The final implants were added when our bodies were deemed ready, the progenoid glands that would eventually allow us to pass our genetic legacy to future generations of space marines, and the black carapace that interfaced directly with our power armor. The day I received my power armor was the day Tiber Jorel truly died, if any part of him had survived the preceding transformation. I stood in the chapter's armory as the artificers and tech marines performed the sacred rituals of armoring, anointing each component with blessed oils before attaching it to my body. The process took hours. Each piece connected to the black carapace interface with reverent precision. Each seal checked and rechecked for integrity. When the final component, the helmet, was handed to me, I experienced a moment of profound disconnection from my former self. I raised the helmet and looked into its empty eye lenses, seeing my reflection distorted on their surface. The face that looked back was not one I recognized. The features were too perfect, too symmetrical, the result of enhanced healing and the osmodulase effect on my bone structure. The eyes were no longer the muddy brown of my birth, but a piercing amber, a side effect of the oculobe implant that enhanced my vision. The skin was pale where once it had been the olive tone common to hive dwellers, now rarely exposed to natural light. I donned the helmet, hearing the hiss as it sealed to the gorge. The auto senses came online, flooding my awareness with tactical data, environmental readings, squad status indicators. The world became at once more detailed and more abstract, filtered through layers of augmented interpretation and combat prioritization. "Brother Joral," the master of the armory addressed me, his voice coming through my helmet's vox with perfect clarity. "You bear now the full panoply of war granted to the Adeptus Astartes. Treat it as an extension of your body, for that is what it is. Maintain it as you would maintain your bolter or combat blade, for it is as much a weapon as those. Respect it as you would respect the chapter's banner, for it represents 10,000 years of warfare in the Emperor's name." I flexed my gauntleted hands, feeling the power armor's systems respond to the neural impulses transmitted through the black carapace. The suit multiplied my already enhanced strength many times over, yet moved with a fluidity that belied its massive weight. I took a step, then another, adjusting to the sensation of walking in what was essentially a small tank shaped like a man. "Your final trial awaits," the armory master continued. "May the Emperor guide your bolter." The final trial was both simpler and more profound than any that had come before. We were taken deep into the fortress monastery to a chamber known as the Hall of Truth. There, attended only by the chapter's senior officers and chaplain, we would face the ultimate test of our transformation and indoctrination. The Hall of Truth was circular, its walls lined with statues of chapter heroes dating back to the founding. The floor was inscribed with text in an ancient script, passages from the Codex Astartes and the chapter's own battle liturgies. In the center stood a simple pedestal bearing a single item, a bolt pistol of ancient design, its metal worn smooth by thousands of hands that had held it before mine. Chapter Master Vanax himself presided over the ceremony, accompanied by Brother Chaplain Mordith and Brother Apothecary Vaughn, the trinity that had overseen our transformation from the beginning. Gathered around them were company captains and other senior officers, their armor adorned with honors from countless campaigns. "Step forward, Brother Joral," Vanax commanded. I advanced to the center of the chamber, my armor's auto senses picking up subtle energy readings from the floor and walls that suggested technologies far more advanced than the chamber's ancient appearance implied. "Remove your helm," Mordith instructed. I complied, disengaging the seals and lifting the helmet from my head. The air in the chamber was cold and still, heavy with the scent of incense and the subtle ozone tang of active technology. "You stand before your chapter as one transformed," Vanax continued. "Body remade, mind indoctrinated, spirit tempered. Yet one question remains, one truth that must be faced before you can take your place among the battle brothers of the chapter." Apothecary Vaughn stepped forward, a data slate in his hands. "According to our records, you were born in Hive Secundus, Segmentum Pacificus. You rose to prominence in a gang known as the Blood Scorpions, achieving the rank of lieutenant through multiple acts of violence and cunning. Your gang controlled 3 sectors of the Underhive, primarily engaging in protection rackets and the distribution of Obscura, a prohibited narcotic." He paused, looking up from the data slate to fix me with his gaze, one human eye and one augmetic studying me with clinical detachment. "Your final action before recruitment was the assassination of a rival gang leader, an individual known as Vex, who had attempted to encroach on Blood Scorpion territory. You killed him and 6 of his bodyguards using a combination of poisoned blades and improvised explosives. Is this accounting accurate?" "It is," I confirmed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, too deep and resonant to belong to the ganger being described. Chaplain Mordith stepped forward next, his skull helm removed for the occasion, revealing a face so heavily augmented that little original flesh remained. "Before you is a bolt pistol," he stated. "It is loaded with a single round." He paused. "Behind you stands Brother Thaddeus, who completed his final trial 3 months ago." I had not been aware of another presence in the chamber, my auto senses having been disabled when I removed my helmet. I did not turn to look, maintaining protocol by keeping my attention fixed on the senior officers before me. "The final truth is this," Mordith continued. "The transformation you have undergone is not merely physical, not simply a matter of enhanced organs and conditioned responses. It is a fundamental rewriting of what you are, a rebirth into a purpose beyond anything your former self could comprehend. To complete this transformation, you must sever the final tie to your past." Vanax spoke again, his voice like the rumble of distant artillery. "Take up the bolt pistol, Brother Joral. Turn and face Brother Thaddeus. One of you will leave this chamber as a full battle brother of the chapter. The other will have given his final service." Understanding dawned with cold clarity. This was the true purpose of the Hall of Truth, not simply a ceremonial chamber, but a final, irrevocable test of loyalty and indoctrination. I was being ordered to kill or be killed by another scout who had passed all previous trials. A final proving that we were indeed weapons of the Imperium, that we would follow orders without hesitation, even unto death. I took up the bolt pistol, feeling its ancient weight settle in my gauntleted hand. Then I turned to face Brother Thaddeus. He stood 5 meters away, also clad in the power armor of a full Astartes, but without his helmet. His face was unfamiliar to me, likely from a different recruitment cycle. His expression was utterly calm, accepting of whatever outcome awaited. He was unarmed. In that moment, a cascade of thoughts flashed through my enhanced mind. I could refuse the order, demonstrate that some remnant of human morality remained within me. I could attempt to fire wide, deliberately missing, though the chapter master would certainly perceive such disobedience. I could turn the weapon on myself, denying them the satisfaction of this final corruption of my humanity. Yet all these thoughts were themselves echoes of a humanity that no longer truly existed within me. Tiber Joral might have found this test abhorrent, might have rejected it on principle despite his own violent past. But I was no longer Tiber Joral. I was Brother Joral, a space marine neophyte conditioned through hypno-indoctrination and transformed through genetic engineering to follow orders without question, to see the chapter's will as absolute. I raised the bolt pistol, centered the iron sights on Brother Thaddeus's forehead, and squeezed the trigger. The report was deafening in the enclosed space, the bolt pistol's mechanism cycling with ancient precision. Brother Thaddeus remained standing for a moment, a neat hole in his forehead leaking blood and cerebral matter. Then he collapsed, his power armor making a tremendous crash as it impacted the stone floor. I lowered the weapon, turned, and faced the chapter master once more, awaiting further instructions. Vanax nodded once, the barest acknowledgement of my action. "The flesh is weak," he intoned, "but the spirit endures. You have severed your connection to humanity, Brother Joral. You are now truly Astartes." Apothecary Vaughn moved to the fallen body of Brother Thaddeus, already preparing to harvest the valuable progenoid glands that would eventually grow into gene seed for future implantation. Nothing was wasted. Even in death, a space marine served the chapter. "There is one detail that may interest you, Brother Joral," Chaplain Mordith said, his augmetic eyes glinting in the chamber's dim light. "Brother Thaddeus was born Vex Garnon of Hive Secundus, the rival gang leader whose assassination was your final act as a mortal man. The Emperor's design moves in ways beyond our comprehension, does it not? The revelation should have shocked me, should have provoked some emotional response. The man I had just executed had been my sworn enemy in my previous life, a man I had already attempted to kill once before. Now, through the incomprehensible workings of fate or the Emperor's will, we had both been selected for transformation. Both survived the brutal process, only for one to execute the other in this final trial. Yet I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no regret, no poetic appreciation for the symmetry of our fates. Such emotions belonged to Tiber Joral, and he was gone. Only the weapon remained. Return to the armory, Vanax ordered. Complete the rituals of armament. You will be assigned to the 5th Company under Captain Helios. The orcs of Grimscar have invaded the Thaxos system. We deploy at dawn. And so I did. I returned to the armory where my armor was blessed and properly consecrated now that I had proven worthy of it. I was issued a bolter, a combat knife, and the other accoutrements of a tactical marine. I took my place in Squad Tarentus of the 5th Company, one component among many in the chapter's order of battle. That evening, as I performed the proper rites of maintenance on my weapon and armor, Brother Sergeant Tarentus approached me in the company barracks. "The first deployment is the hardest," he said without preamble. "Not because of the combat, because it is the first time you truly understand what you have become." I looked up from my work, my hands never ceasing their methodical cleaning of my bolter's firing mechanism. "I understand my purpose, Brother Sergeant." "No," he replied, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of service. "You understand your function. Purpose comes later, if at all. Function is what you do. Purpose is why you do it." He sat beside me on the maintenance bench, his own armor already prepared for the coming deployment. When I was newly elevated to the battle companies, much like you, I found myself questioning, not our orders, not our doctrine, but the deeper meaning of our existence. We are created to fight and die for an imperium that scarcely acknowledges our sacrifice, to protect humans who fear us as much as they revere us. We are weapons, yes, but weapons wielded for what end? The question seemed dangerously close to heresy, the kind of philosophical doubt that brother chaplains were tasked with purging. Yet Tarentus was a veteran of 2 centuries of warfare, his loyalty beyond question. "I found my answer in the most unexpected place," he continued. "A compliance action on a hive world not dissimilar to your birth world. We were deployed to put down a worker insurrection that had turned violent. A simple mission beneath our capabilities, but the local PDF forces had failed and the planetary governor had called upon the chapter." He paused. His enhanced eyes focused on something beyond the barracks walls, a memory preserved with transhuman clarity. "We were clearing a hab block when I encountered a family cowering in their dwelling, parents and 3 children, terrified both of the insurrectionists who had taken over their level and of us, the Emperor's angels of death come to restore order. The father stood before his family, arms spread as if he could somehow protect them from a bolt round or frag grenade. There was no defiance in his stance, only desperate animal fear for his offspring. Tarentus turned to look at me directly. In that moment, I understood, not intellectually but viscerally, that man, weak and mortal and insignificant in the great machinations of the Imperium, possessed a courage born of love that we, for all our genetic enhancement and indoctrination, could never truly comprehend. He was what we protect, not the Imperium as an abstraction, not the distant emperor on his golden throne, but humanity in all its flawed, irrational glory. He stood, his point made. "You executed Brother Thaddeus today without hesitation, as was required. You are a weapon perfectly crafted for war. But never forget that weapons require wielders, and purpose is found not in the killing blow, but in what that blow protects." With that, he left me to my maintenance rituals, his words settling into my mind alongside the hypno-indoctrination and battle doctrines that now formed the architecture of my thoughts. The deployment to Thaxos 3 came at dawn, as promised. We boarded the strike cruiser Vigilant Faith in perfect formation, each squad moving with the precision of a single organism rather than individual warriors. The journey through the warp would take 17 days, during which we would prepare, train, and pray for the coming battle. In my meditation cell, as I knelt before the small shrine to the Emperor that every Space Marine maintained, I contemplated Brother Sergeant Tarentus's words. The concept of purpose beyond function was still difficult to grasp with my remade mind. I had been conditioned to follow orders, to kill the enemies of the Imperium, to serve until death claimed me. What purpose could exist beyond these parameters? Yet some small remnant of Tiber Jorel, Some echo of the human I had once been reached for this concept. I remembered the underhive, the daily struggle for survival that consumed the lives of its inhabitants. I remembered my gang, the crude brotherhood forged in shared hardship and violence. I remembered my mother, her face now blurred by time and hypno-indoctrination, who had died of a preventable disease because medicine was a luxury the underclasses could not afford. These memories were like artifacts from another life, viewed through armored glass, impossible to truly reclaim. But they contained something that my new existence lacked, a quality that defied the logical structures of Astarte's thought patterns. I completed my devotions and rose, setting aside these reflections as irrelevant to my function. We would reach Thaxos 3 in 17 days. There would be orcs to kill, ground to secure, orders to follow. The question of purpose could wait, perhaps indefinitely. As I prepared for the first training cycle in the strike cruiser's practice cages, my enhanced hearing caught a conversation between two chapter serfs preparing equipment nearby. They spoke in hushed tones, unaware that a space marine could hear them from such a distance. "Another batch of new ones," one serf said. "Faces like stone, all of them. Remember when we were taken from Hive Primus? We thought they would be our saviors, taking us into the stars." "They are what they need to be," the other replied. "The Emperor's finest, his angels of death. Without them, the Imperium would have fallen millennia ago." "I know, but sometimes I wonder what they sacrificed to become what they are. Not just their bodies, but what's inside. The human part." The first serf made the sign of the Aquila hastily. "Dangerous thoughts, those. Best keep to your duties. The angels hear more than you think." They moved away, their conversation turning to more mundane matters of equipment preparation. But their words lingered in my thoughts, uninvited and unwelcome. What had I sacrificed? Everything that made Tiber Jural a person, certainly. My past, my connections, my capacity for certain emotions and experiences. But was that truly a sacrifice, if those things would have led only to an inglorious death in the underhive, forgotten and meaningless? Was it not better to serve as a weapon in the Emperor's arsenal, to die with purpose, if not with understanding? Purpose, again. The concept circled in my mind like a predator, challenging the neat structures of my indoctrination. I pushed it aside once more, focusing instead on the coming combat drills. There would be decades, perhaps centuries, if I survived, to contemplate such matters. For now, there were orcs to kill and a sector to secure. As the strike cruiser Vigilant Faith entered the warp, its Geller field holding the horrors of the Immaterium at bay, I joined my squad for tactical briefings. The purity of combat would clear my mind of these unnecessary philosophical digressions. I was Brother Joral, tactical marine of the 5th Company. I was a weapon of the Imperium, forged from human material but elevated beyond humanity's limitations. And if some ghost of Tiber Joral still haunted the transhuman weapon I had become, it would fade in time, lost beneath the weight of centuries of warfare and service. This was not a tragedy to be mourned, but simply the reality of what it meant to become one of the Emperor's angels of death. The boy had died so the weapon might live. And in the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, weapons are the only currency of consequence.